is Sizwe Cawe from the University of Johannesburg, and he will be talking about the ethnobotany of the Eastern Cape.
This is too nice. I want to go for this. You want to go to the next slide? Good afternoon, everyone. I am told that when you're in Rome, you must do as the Romans do. So I'd like to start off by thanking everybody who has made it possible for me to come here, starting with the University of Johannesburg and Professor Van Wyk, my promoter, and his team that did the logistics of getting this large number of people to come to this conference. And also I'd like to thank the conference organizers for accepting my paper. And last but not least, I'd like to thank you for coming to listen to my talk. The Ethnobotany of the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape is in South Africa. It is that region that is colored over there. Inside South Africa, there is a country called Lesotho. I may well refer to it at some point in time if there is a chance. So the idea was to basically put between two covers of a document all ethnobotanically relevant species of the Eastern Cape. The pedigree of the ethnobotany of the Eastern Cape, maybe by certain standards, you could say it is pretty long, because the first person to talk about our plants in writing, to write about them rather than talk about them, was Vasco, more than 500 years ago. And he said that the country is well wooded with many trees and cattle. I will show you what he meant. But he didn't go into the interior, in which case he might have modified that statement. Try to show you what he meant by that also. And then there's other people who sort of came in, you know, the spice trade, finding a route to India. They also came in there, had their things. But possibly the one person we could talk about would be Hendrik Bianche. He spotted that where people were actually growing dagga, as we call it, cannabis. And there's been lots of talk this morning about cannabis. I was quite surprised that we've been growing this thing for so long. Then Carl Thunberg, you're botanists, so you know that fellow, a student of Linnaeus. He's the father. He's the father of plant taxonomy and whatever you want to call it in South Africa. You've got Sparrman. He recorded remedies from a plant called Artemisia, as we call it. And there was John Burroughs, a whole host of people. Then there was this guy who something prodromus, whatever. Anyway, he published that. Then the first quite important book would have been that by Andrew Smith in 1895, where he said, the book is called A Contribution to the South African Materia Medica. It's available online. It's been digitized, luckily. Then the first EMIC report on ethnobotany was by John Henderson Soga. He was the son of the first minister of religion. His mother happened to be Scottish. So I'm not sure whether that was totally EMIC. But he was the first Xhosa person to write about us and our use of our plants way back then. And then a few years later, a certain professor, Mzamane, also wrote about some medicinal and magical and so forth sort of plants. And then there's a whole lot of people. I'm just scanning some of them. There would have been Zugulu, medicinal plants. He published a number of other people, but he's also from the Eastern Cape. Then I use all of that literature, including all published papers I could put my hands on from these universities, unpublished dissertations, tons and tons of them, from those universities. And also quite importantly, the part of the grey literature would have been those unpublished reports, especially from the erstwhile University of Transkei, that was done by especially those two people. Eastern Cape is varied. If you look at that map of South Africa, that spot in the middle with no color, that's Lesotho. It's a different country. Now look at the gradation from dark blue to a lighter blue, that is a rainfall gradient. So as you move from east to west, the rain becomes less and less, and it becomes less and less, you cannot predict it. So around about here, if you follow just about this is about the limit of where you can actually grow sorghum, which used to be the staple of our people before maize was introduced. So west of that, the sorghum didn't do too well. So that land to the west of this line here was basically for the pastoralists and the hunter-gatherers. And that's roughly where there was conflict between people of European origin moving eastwards and clashing with my people. And over 100 years of war, of resistance. Yet the Zulu people tend to be more famous. I mean, they were done in about a decade. Somebody's gonna kill me. Okay, this is quite important. It's not moving. Okay, this map is not the best, but it shows what I want to show. It shows hotspots, botanical hotspots in South Africa. There's basically 3 colors there. And so those are the 3 hotspots. All 3 of them you do find within the boundaries of the Eastern Cape. So which means that that place is very, very diverse in terms of species, because it's got 3 hotspots all converging. You can, if you've got eagle eyes, you can see bits of this within the boundaries of the Eastern Cape. Is the green, obviously that. There's bits of that too. So you've got the Maputaland, Ponderland, which is subtropical. You've got the green is mainly the Capensis. I'm sure your botanists, you know about the flora kingdom Capensis. So bits of it also protrude in the Eastern Cape. And then there's succulent Karoo. Also, we've got bits of it also coming into the Eastern Cape. So floristically, we are quite rich in the Eastern Cape. And these are the main vegetation types of all the, the boundaries there are the various provinces. The Eastern Cape has got more colors in it than any other province. So in terms of vegetation types also, the Eastern Cape is very rich. So I've just listed them there. This is the kind of country that Vasco would have been talking about, well-wooded country. It's along the coast. And then, the vegetation can be very lush. And then if he had gone in the interior, this is what you'd have seen, the grassland. But then, of course, it can also be very dry, especially in the west. Remember, I said that rainfall gradient can also be very dry. This is the Karoo. Most of the plants there are succulents. So we've got quite a wide variety of vegetation types in the Eastern Cape. It's in Africa. It can also snow, believe it or not. Yes, so there's a snow normal village. And the people, now the terminology in South Africa may well differ from maybe what is used here in America. When people say you are black, they're talking about somebody who looks like me, right? And then it colored, it really means somebody who looks like me, whose parents look like me, one parent, another one is of European origin. It doesn't matter if the other parent was Indian, it has to be white, someone. But it's also complex because then the San and the Khoi people are also lumped in there. Then you've got the Indians, the whites, they're represented. This is a bit dated though, 2011. I doubt that that composition would have changed much. So it wouldn't have changed much. So then the Xhosa people who are the ones whose ethnobotany I was recording, not of the Afrikaans speaking or the English or the Sotho. The Sotho are also black people like us, but they speak kind of closely related, but Highveld, from the Highveld. Now, if you talk about Xhosa, they are not one tribe. There are quite a lot of tribes. The Sotho are not part of the Xhosa, so I did not include them. So that's a whole lot of people. There's about 6 kings that are recognized within the Eastern Cape, but not all those tribes have got kings. They're maybe too small or something. Now let's talk botany. If you look there, you'll see that we've got 9,000, about 9,000 species in the province. This is very similar to the number of species in Capensis, the kingdom Capensis. It's quite high. And then the ones that are used are about 13% that are of ethnobotanical relevance or importance. Most of them obviously are indigenous. Then you go a whole lot. When I say endemic, not endemic to the province, but endemic to the country. We've got lots of exotic stuff. Some of it is cultivated. Some of them, they still have to give names to those things, so they are unassigned. Nothing special there, right? More or less, that's what you'd expect. Mainly flowering plants are used. A few cryptogams. Do you still use that term? I'm old, so terminology changes. Now, if you look at the use of the species by family, how many species are in the family and how many are used, you get a pretty decent correlation that R is the square root of that number. It's quite high. Some interesting family way up there on its own. Now, if you look at the numbers that you would expect to find compared to the numbers that you'd expect to find, you will find that the Asteraceae, you've got 29 more than you might have suspected. Also the Solanaceae, that's the food ones, isn't it? And then you've got the Lamiaceae, they smell, they've got a smell, right? Euphobiaceae, it's quite interesting because it's got this mucilaginous sap. So for us, in terms of the ethnobot, it's quite important. I'll give you a name, Muti. It's not Xhosa, it's Zulu, but it's well known, it's short, you can remember it. So those are the families that are quite important, and they are more than you might have expected based on the regression. Then those that are underrepresented, the thing that caught my eye is the Ericaceae and the Proteaceae. I'd always known that they were underrepresented. They belong to what we over there we call the Cape flora, the fynbos. Think about the fynbos. They are known to have a high carbon to nitrogen ratio. So I don't think therefore that you'd expect too much nourishment from them. Neither would you expect too much muti from them. Remember the word muti. Yeah. So that those ones struck me that I would expect them to be underrepresented because of the kinds of plants that grow in fynbos, poor soils, and I don't know how they exist there. Anyway, then come on. Yeah. So those are the families that are important. The one that stands up way above the others is the Asteraceae. That's the one in the regression that was furthest to the right of the line. Then you've got the Fabaceae way down, and then the rest follow. This seems to be typical of South Africa. It seems to be typical of South Africa because other studies have found the same thing, that the Asteraceae is very, very important. Then we've got quite a number of exotic plants there, about 206 that are found. Most of them, as you might have expected, are used for medicine, then followed by food. If you remove the food and you just start from there to there, that is what we call muti. Those are some of the uses. That's medicinal, food, craft. This one is charm. Then this one, it's used for many things. And this one is aloe. It's actually, muti is also used for fuel. Let me skip this one. Most of them are indigenous, we know that. And these are the medicinal families. The Asteraceae is the most important. Well, I don't think I needed this one. Again, let me skip this one because somebody's standing next to me. Then the overrepresented ones in terms of medicinal, immediately the Fabaceae, followed by the Lamiaceae, Asphodelaceae. It's quite, well, okay. Underrepresented, again, this one strikes me, the residue. The residue is part of the Cape flora. The ones that I think they've got a high carbon nitrogen ratio. Then families with the largest number of food plants is the Asteraceae. I suppose that's not surprising. That's the food plants. There's also lots of food plants coming from that family. And the regression is not so good here. It's less, 0.6 as opposed to 0.8 in the other one. The Asteraceae lead, Solanaceae, Lamiaceae, and so forth. And here, you don't find a single one of the feignboss species. In fact, when it comes to charm plants, we use charms. There's no correlation between family size and how many species people use there. Of course, if you want a charm, you maybe would go to the Asphodelaceae. We call it in Ellis because they've got this mucilage and it's quite important. Asteraceae, maybe they works on something different. If your Phobaceae is also in Telesi, it's got this mucilage, and Apiaceae, the smell possibly, then Apocynaceae is the smell, and the others is probably some effect on the skin that makes people want to go for those. All right. Okay, I could go on and on and on, but that's fine. That's fine. At least you had a taste. Thank you so much.
I really